What is going on, everyone? It's LFC Transfer Room here, and it's a Wednesday, which normally means Kev TV time, but there's no Kev. So instead of Kev TV, I've gone for Mick Mike. Mick Mike and Lewis. We are definitely going to do the Mike, Mike, constantly, all things. So we may just go with Mr. Edwards, please come back, every time we want to speak to Mike and stick with Mick with me. But we've got a few stories to get through tonight. But before we go anywhere, I think this is the first time that I've been with you, Mr. Edwards. Please come back. And Lewis. So I'll start with you, Lewis. How are you doing, sir? Are you roasting like all of us?
Wet it. I've got the window open at the minute, hoping no one can hear me. But yeah, I'm good. I'll be happy once Saudi shut. The window's done with that. Don't have to stress
it's
about
tomorrow, isn't it? It all closes off tomorrow.
As soon as that's done, I'll be happy.
And Mike, for you, you've got a good selection of shirts there hanging around. Thiago number 6. Will you be happy when the Saudi window's shut and we can just get focused on?
Yeah, it seems, I'm touching wood here, it seems to have gone quiet, doesn't it, last day or so with this. And I think it's, fingers crossed, not going to be a thing tomorrow. We just need to get through that, don't we, and then get to who we got next. Wolves, isn't it? Get to that game a week on Saturday, and go to the top of the league. Beat them 12-30, top of the league.
That'll do. That's not bad for. I was looking at all the predictions, like all the sports pundits and the predictions that they make and stuff like that. Most of them didn't even put us in the top 4, Nick. And it's like people have forgotten who we are because we had one slow start to the season, but we've in the last, I think, is it 21 games we've been unbeaten now? If you ended last season, this one. So we're looking all right again, aren't we, Mick?
Yeah, I think we are. I think we played quite well. I think we especially played like it was Liverpool of old against Villa. I think we played very well. We literally shut them out the game. They had a few opportunities, but when you got Big Ali in there, then it doesn't really matter how many opportunities they have. At least pull off most saves. I didn't think we looked great against Chelsea. The Bournemouth game we expected to win. Newcastle, Nunez, brilliant. But yeah, I think we'll be up there. I don't think we'll challenge, but I think we'll definitely be up there and for the second and third spot.
Now, I'm going to start. It's not part of our agenda, but I still want to start it just because Mr. Edwards mentioned it, which is the Saudi window closes tomorrow, and as much as I know it's all going to come back with a force in January, force of 1,000 suns. It'll be good for us to get the majority of our season running, won't it, Lewis, before any of this Salah noise comes on again, and we can just sort of focus on him scoring goals, him breaking records, him getting in the top 10 of all time. Then fair enough, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're lucky with him as well because he doesn't get injured. As weird as it sounds, he's not one of these people who gets injured every other week or, it's keeping him, he's going to play. So I don't see the point in getting rid of him. I've just done a video on it. I don't see the benefit of losing someone who is guaranteed at least 30 contributions this season. There's no point. And if you got 200 million, you could get Caicedo and Lavia for that. You'll get 2 players now.
Could get Enzo Fernandez for that now, by the sounds of things.
Get Chelsea's one Chelsea player maybe. So there's no point. You're losing someone who is going to provide. And yeah, he's going to go away for AFCON, but he's still going to come back. He's still going to be just as good.
And I think that's the question, isn't it, Mr. Edwards? When we get to the point where AFCON's coming around, January transfer window's open, that's probably where the next big conversations comes, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But the thing about January is we'll kind of have a feel of what the season's looking like at that point. There's a world where we're within 3 points of City and we're fighting out at the top of the table and it's another titanic battle at the top. And now, obviously, he's not going anywhere. There's a world where we may be second and third as an Arsenal, but probably maybe a bit away from the rest of the teams. And we think, well, Actually, maybe is it worth at that point if we can get more from him, get the money and go and move on, because we're not going to win the league, but we are going to get top 4. Or there's a world where we're in and around 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and it's quite close, and we need him to get that top 4. So that will influence what we're feeling like at that point, and what we feel they can do. Obviously, there's the opportunity to bring someone in, and obviously AFCON does bring is in the equation, I would say. You know, he pretty much leaves first week in January, I believe, and probably back first week in Feb, which actually is only 2 league games, so not the end of the world, I don't think. But still, if you're going to potentially replace him, and you've got someone in mind, it's quite a good time. I think you probably potentially play 2 FA Cup and 2 League Cup games if you're in the semi-final. Quite a nice thing to introduce a new player to if they've not played. So we'll see. But yeah, I think once it's gone tomorrow, let's just see where we are and go for that. You know, the next few games, there's some toughies in there. Get through them. There's a run November, December where significant points are available, and we could be right in the mixer at turn of the year.
You make a really good point, because you think, yeah, Wolves is probably the easy game. Then I think it's Brighton and
West Ham at home, which isn't easy.
It's the teams we struggle against normally, isn't it? It's because the top 6, we normally always finish top of that league. You know, like the top 6 compete against each other. And Spurs is the other one. Spurs is the other game, and obviously they're on a good run. So it'd just be nice to get it out of the way. Now, if you are new here, please like it and subscribe to the channel. Stream every day, 7:30. We do a load of videos as well, covering different bits and pieces. So please do like and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to ask the chat a question, and I'm going to ask you the same question, Mick, because what we've seen all over social media is if you take 200 million for Salah, you put 150 million pounds on the table to Arsenal, and you go for Saka. To me, that just seems bonkers. But what do you think in the chat? Who do you want? If you got 200 million, do you go for Saka? Do you go for someone else? Mick, for you, 150 million for Saka?
I don't think Saka's on the same level, but you're never going to get anyone who's on the same level as Salah currently. But we'd never get Saka from Arsenal. I don't think, no matter how much we offered them, I don't think they'd ever accept it. But I'm sort of on the fence with the Salah. I think it's a lot of money to turn down for a 31-year-old. He's still going to, but he does bring them that consistent goals and assists every season. But I remember last time AFCON he came back and he was absolutely dreadful for like 2 to 3 months. I'm not sure on it. I think if it's a big offer like between 200 and 250, I would personally sell him, but that's just me. Probably going to get loads of hate now.
No, you're not getting loads of hate. I would say, you've got someone like Kevin De Bruyne, haven't you? Like, he's 32, and obviously he's just got a hamstring injury, so he's going to go down. But Salah will do one more season. Ryan Cherky, everyone's saying, but I just saw that Leon. Have any of you guys seen that Leon video where the crowd are speaking to the players? Now, Ryan Cherky currently plays there. I think that will mentally ruin them for the rest of the season. My guarantee is if you put on a bet on that Leon manager gets sacked by the end of the season, it's pretty much guaranteed, because it's just created the biggest toxicity you can imagine. But a lot of people are saying Ryan Cherky, save him. What about you, Lewis? Are you thinking Salah end the season, then we'll see who's out there?
I'd say wait till summer, because I don't see the benefit of doing it midway through when we're trying to bid on anyone. Everyone knows that we're desperate, so they're just going to ramp the price up. And like I said, Saka last week, for 150 million, the extra 50, you can't really get anything. You can swap in position, but the defense is still going to be dreadful. So if we did get that money, I'd rather invest it in a different part of the pitch rather than just buying someone who's a like-for-like replacement that isn't going to do the same thing. Because we're desperate we need another right back, definitely a centre back. We're going to be losing Thiago. So there's a lot of different areas to cover before trying to cover Salah when we've got enough firepower up front to do it.
Makes sense, don't? Now, Mr. Edwards, obviously you're the specialist in this field. I'm going to throw some of the names at you from chat. So we've got Ryan Cherky, We've got Bakayoko. We've got Vlahovic, which seems like a bigger version of Nunez. Well, what name's standing out to you? Is there anything that makes you want to get your checkbook out, Mr. Edwards?
No, I have to say, like, in an ideal world, you mentioned Saka earlier. I don't think there's a better replacement out there, personally. Age profile, Premier League proven, all that kind of stuff. I think he's a fantastic player. I just think he's unrealistic. You never know, I guess, but I just cannot see it. I agree with the idea of...
Amy from Dortmund's the other name that's coming up quite often.
Yeah, I think we kind of probably have to get his head around the fact that we're probably not going to sign a right winger who's going to get 30 goals a season because there's not many of them about. I said on the stream the other day, I think it was interesting the other day that Klopp mentioned in his press conference about we've now got a lot more goals from midfield. And I think this is already part of this, actually ties into the Salah thing of rather than relying on him to get the 30 and everyone else 10 to 15, maybe have 5 forwards of roughly 15 to 20 goals a season, and then your 6 to 8 from Szoboszlai, McAllister, etc., and chipping in that seems to me that is a lot easier to replace. Maybe we've already got four I think who you would argue are in that bracket. Nunez is obviously the one I believe is capable of going to another level in terms of goal numbers. Obviously from a different area of the pitch, but quite frankly, who cares? If you're right wing gets 15, you centre forward gets 30. Who cares? I think that's possibly where they will go. And if you've got Nunez and Diaz and Jota and Gakpo all getting around 15 to 20, add another one in there. Well, that's what you 80 to 100 goals in a season. Throw another 20 from your midfielders between Jones, Szoboszlai, McAllister, Elliott. You've got your goals there. So I think that's the way we go. There's no one. I'm quite a fan of Bowen. I don't think he's he's obviously not on Salah's level by any stretch, but I like him as a player. Leroy Sané is another one who I've seen a little bits of him recently, and it's interesting. When he was at City, he was very, very direct, wasn't he? A proper winger pacing behind. Obviously, he had a big injury, didn't he? And it's interesting now. He's still got that pace, but he's a little bit more creative, and a bit like Salah has become. He's got that ability to kind of cut inside and pick that pass out, and I think that's quite potentially an interesting one.
I think if you lose them, you don't try and replace him. You have to change the whole system because you can't just bring someone in who's going to do what he does. I think the whole thing would change in the way we play. So like the season we got Van Dijk, the season after where we nearly won the league, we went from press to possession base. And I think it'd be something similar to that, where when Salah goes, we're a bit more conservative with it and try and play a different style.
We've got a few Gnabry's, a few other names floating around.
I think Valverde's an interesting show. Actually, I've not really thought about that. I know he's a slightly different type of player, but very, very good player. And I'd be happy with that. I
think for me, I'm my guess is Nunez is they already bought and paid for replacement, because if you look at where he's got his 3 goals from, and I'm classing the own goal from Matty Cash as his goal because that's exactly what you want from a right-footed player attacking the right-hand wing. You want him to near post, far post, either it ricochets into someone and they get a tap in, or he slams it in the bottom corner of either side. And that's what he's proven to do. He can get past the last man, the same as Salah. So there's some similarities in how he plays. It's just, instead of coming in, he just strikes it on his right. And I think he's not as skillful as Salah, so I actually think that probably works better for him than coming in off the left. But what we've got to appreciate in this is, let's say, for example, we're talking about all these right wingers. We're talking about all these people that may come in if we get rid of Salah. The big question and the big news at the moment is we've been hearing that, we're in talks to try and bring Michael Edwards back. We're in talks to try and bring I've completely forgotten his name.
Julian Ward.
Julian Ward back. Now, Mick, let's say, for example, over the next few months, we bring both of those back in, rebuild our recruitment team to what it was. Then we get £150 million offer for Salah, slightly less because, we haven't done it now. is there a better team that you would want to have 150 million to rebuild attacking goals?
No, we win the league if them two come back, and we have that money. The transfer business they did when they were here was fantastic. They know what they're doing. They know how to find a player. Like Klopp wanted Brandt, and they insisted they went for Salah, and look what he's turned into. They're a different level. They're a different level than the one we currently have now. And I'm with Lewis on this. I don't think Liverpool will, if they do sell Salah, regardless if it's now, January, summer, I don't think they will buy an out-and-out replacement for him. It's like it'd be similar to what they did with the Coutinho money, where they brought in Alisson and Van Dijk. They would strengthen the squad in other areas before, because I think we've got more than enough forwards. We could cope with not having Salah, and we've also got players like Elliott, Doak, who can also play there. So I think they would strengthen in other areas and make an overall better squad instead of bringing one main player in.
So again, if you're new here, please like and subscribe to the channel. We've got 150 of you in here at the moment, so please make sure that you hit that like button. We want to try and get the stream to 50 likes as quickly as we possibly can. Now, Lewis, I'm going to give you and the chat a hypothetical.
Okay.
Salah, 200 million. No Ward, no Edwards. Salah for 150 million, Ward. Salah for 100 million, Ward and Edwards. Which one do you go with?
I feel like I'm on the chase.
There is only one. No, there's not one right answer. It's just an opinion.
If you're talking, the issue is, I'd do the 100 million one, but 100 million nowadays in the market doesn't get you anything. So I'd still do the 200 million, just because I feel like there's a lot more you could buy with it. And to be fair, yeah, Ward and Edwards are the masters of what they do. But since Schmadtke,
yeah, Jorg.
I call him Big Jorg.
Jorg's the release clause.
Yeah.
Can I say, do we think we're romanticising a little bit the previous transfers? Because there was a lot of criticism the year after we won the Champions League, where that was the system. Them two were there, and we signed obviously Elliott for pretty much nothing, and Adrian. I think that was it.
But I think the reason it's because the season before we signed all those players like Fabinho, Alisson, Van Dijk. We did what Chelsea has done, where they spend it over a long period of time, and even Klopp said himself, we have essentially bills to pay for these players that we've just brought in. So I think we were still suffering from the effects of that the next season. Yeah,
and I think the system and the structure is more important than the individuals. And I think because at the end of the day, it's like any business, individuals leave. It's the same with the manager; he'll leave eventually. It's the system that and the process and everything else that matters. And whether that's obviously we're looking from the outside here, it's guesswork, isn't it? Feels like it's maybe changed a little bit recently, and I think that's probably a bigger problem. Now, one thing I would say is that the money we've spent this summer, personally, and it's very early days, obviously, and this could very easily change, but it's looking like we've spent it really, really well. I know obviously the McAllister was Julian Ward's last stand, wasn't it? Apparently, so. I think the whole overall structure is just as important, and whether that means them two coming back to rebuild that and put that in place, and eventually maybe leave in a way that keeps that in place, I don't know. But I think we maybe just sometimes look back and assume that they got everything right, and obviously they did some. Obviously, generally speaking, amazing job. The signings, we pretty much bar Naby Keita. Any kind of time we've ever spent any real money, they've been successes on the whole.
Has anyone else had a success rate like they've had in world football?
Possibly not, but I don't think our success rate will change this summer from what I've seen so far. I think it's the same.
Maybe Brighton at the moment.
Brighton, yeah. It's a different model, though, isn't it? That's the thing there. They are very much by the rough diamond.
Possibly as well. I mean, they sell players for like Dembele, Bellingham, Lewandowski. I mean, they sign them for cheap and then they sell them on for extortionate prices.
do you think that there are different models though? Those clubs are they? Brighton and Dortmund are probably quite similar in a way. They probably buy quite a lot of rough diamonds. Some will work, some won't, and then they get some enough, like a Casido for 4 million, selling for 110. That pays for the 5 other £4 million players that have played for that haven't success.
Yeah.
Where realistically, at the level Liverpool at, you can buy the odd one of those, but we're looking for those at maybe like 22 to 24. Seems to be a bit of a sweet spot, doesn't it? With 150, 200 games. Jota was in that stage. Salah was when he came, and Mane, and plenty of them. Nunez, I guess, as well. So it's probably a slightly different model. Doesn't mean we can't look at that, but I think it's a different market with fishing in there.
Mick, I think what's got everyone excited about the prospect of these two coming back is, one, the way that we missed out on some of these negotiations really irked people because it never happened. And it seems we still do our business quietly. It's just a couple of things got made public by others. If you've got that situation, though, you've got Ward, you've got Edwards back. I think what most people are excited about is the prospect of we bid 100 million for Caicedo and then we spent 38 million of it. If we get 200 million for Salah, all Liverpool fans ever wanted was to give Michael Edwards and Julian Ward a big war chest to just go and build the future of this club. And before you answer, thank you very much, Jen. Always appreciate it. I like the change in profile image. Bringing Ryan on. He's going to be closing our show. But we're currently talking about Michael Edwards and Julian Ward potentially coming back. So thank you, as always, for the support for the channel. Sorry, Mick, back to your answer. It's what we want to see, those two with a big war chest, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's Liverpool only really spend big when they sell. If you look at if they get the money for Salah, I'm pretty confident that pretty much all that money will go back into transfers because it did with Coutinho. Liverpool just don't like spending money when they haven't brought it in. Well, they do spend, but not to the heights that we think they should spend, and what they should spend as one of the biggest clubs in England and in world football. That's what they should spend, but they need a better, because they've had a year to plan for this transfer, and I do like the signings we've made. I still like the Endo one, just doesn't sit well with me. I mean, his market value was 6.5 million. We paid 18 million for him. We've overpaid on that. The Gravenberch is a good deal. Slides a release clause, so anyone can activate a release clause and take a genius. But yeah, I just think if we're never going to get that big war chest unless we sell the player, that's going to give us that money. And there's no better two people who would spend that 200 million or whatever it is, in my opinion, than them two.
I think the thing for me is Michael Edwards has had I think he put so much in. And I think he was burnt out. And burnout's a real issue for a lot of people in the workplace. But now he's been away for about 4 years. He's had time with his family. He's had time to relax, Lewis. I think this could be the period of time where actually he's thinking, well, do you know what? I know what situation's going to be there. I know what I'm going to be doing for a period of time. I know that I'm coming in to help build the future to replace Klopp and stuff like that. Because, we need to have a conversation in 3 or 4 years about Klopp not, renewing his contract and stuff. I don't think he's going to be with us after his next contract. Mm. So there's that whole succession planning of the future of the club that might excite him. What do you think would be the appeal for him to come back?
It's tricky because I think anyone who works with Klopp, you're going to be blessed because he can make anything from anything. Like look at the team he was first working with, and he got us to the Europa League final. So I think if you're planning a long-term future with him, great. But afterwards, I don't really know, because I don't know if the prospect of losing one of the best managers in our history to then going into the unknown is exciting for them. Because you might have a manager who comes in and says, I want this, this, and this, and they can't give us this, this, and this. So it's a tricky one. If a new Klopp was staying longer than what he was, I think that would be the exciting part. But sometimes, the investors, but say Michael Edwards, you might not get on with certain managers, for example. So unless we know who we'd be having next, it's a tricky one to say whether he's looking forward to the long term because we don't know.
I assume he would pick the next manager though if he came back, wouldn't he?
He'd have an insight
or a massive say anyway, at least.
But I think there's a really, and this is just an opinion, I've no basis for this, but I think there's a really big chance that whoever is doing the director of football role will most likely be the highest chance of conflict with Klopp, Mr. Edwards, because they're going to disagree. You know, the Salah and Brandt thing, and you're trying to influence probably the most influential and inspirational person to your way of thinking. And that's probably got one of the reasons why Mike Edwards was so burnt out towards the end, because you're fighting against a legend of the game at times.
Stubborn man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those, isn't it, that I can imagine how hard work that is. The thing about it is that the conflict and that is not necessarily a bad thing from the club's point of view. I think I heard Klopp talk a lot about, he's not wanting to surround himself with yes men and have people who will challenge him. So I get the feeling, whilst that is probably hard work for people, he also enjoys that, and he thinks that is the way to work. But I can imagine for people who have to work with him, that over time can quite frankly wear you down. So maybe hopefully he's not, is it 3 or 4 years or whatever it is since he left, and he's not done anything else as far as we're aware, ready to come back again. And maybe it is what will Klopp have 2 more years after this season, I think, left on his contract? Something along the lines of come back for 3 years, do the last 2 years with Klopp, pick the next manager and be there for the handover essentially for a season. Come and give us 3 years. That might be the pitch. If you're FSG, that is maybe the pitch that you give him. We'll give you everything for that 3 years, and then you can go off into the sunset a hero again because you've bought all these great players and you've brought a brilliant manager to replace a brilliant manager. So I could, if I were them, that's kind of what the pitch would be, I guess.
Just have one thing on Klopp. Do we think that Klopp is too involved in the transfers of what goes on? Because I find it baffling that we went for Colwell and then we didn't get him, and then we just never even looked at another player. To me, that just screams stubbornness, that you never got the player that you wanted. There was plenty of other options available.
You see, for me, I'm kind of with you, and then there's the part of me that's going, and this is where the whole Edwards and Ward thing comes in. Klopp's playing in a world where he wants the top 1% of the top 1%. We're talking about the creamiest of the cream on top. And if nobody else can get to that level, I agree he's got an issue where he's not prepared to necessarily always take a step down on potential. I think he knows what he wants. That's who he wants. If the player's giving him a sign that they want him as well, I think he's all in until he can get them out. Which is what happened with Van Dijk, Alisson, stuff like that. Van Dijk probably gave him the confirmation, I want to play for you. Levi Colwell's probably given him the confirmation, I want to play for you. But without Chelsea letting him go, he's got to wait until Chelsea implode financially, which is only 6 months away, if we're honest.
I think that one's a bit of a tricky one, though, because the main reason Colwell wanted to leave originally was because he wanted to know he was going to get game time. And I think if you look at our squad, who is going to knock Van Dijk out of position, or Canate when he's fit? Whereas at Chelsea, now he's guaranteed to start because we've got so many injuries. So I think that had a bit of an impact on it.
Completely makes sense. Now we're going to move on from Mr. Edwards and Mr. Ward, and we're going to talk about Jesper Lindstrøm. Now, Lewis, Jesper Lindstrøm said no to Liverpool, or claimed he said no to Liverpool, and joined Napoli. And it's pretty much exactly as you've just pointed out. He was saying, I don't think I'm going to get game time for Liverpool. Is that a player that's just not meant? I'm a Liverpool fan. I'd love to play for Liverpool, but I have to make a decision that's about game time. That's a player who is not in the mental space to be a Liverpool player for me.
Definitely. No, I agree with that. I think if you go through any club, no matter who it is, whether it's Villa, Liverpool, Everton, Chelsea, City, there's a list of players who have gone, no, I'm not interested. I remember when Gareth Barry said no to us years ago. I remember when Alexis Sanchez did it, when we were trying to get him from Barcelona. Zielinski did it a few seasons ago. So it's happened to everyone. If I'm happy with the fact that, say, Gravenberch has come and he's said himself, like, I'm just happy. I just want to be here. It doesn't matter. I want to be at the club. Having someone who's like, I want to start every game in the modern game, especially with teams like City and us, it's just not the case because we rotate so much. So it's, he's well within his right to say, I want game time, but we can't, no one should be guaranteed game time. No one should be told you will get this if you come to us, because that shouldn't be the way it works. It should go off work rate, not what you've been promised.
Mick, what do you think about this? Like, there's a couple of things saying they just don't believe it. It's just maybe we inquired, but we never really followed through or anything like that. What are your thoughts on this? It's weird for a player to say it.
I mean, if you're a Liverpool fan and he loves the club, and then as a player for me, I'd be like, well, I want to go and then fight for that place, that regular game time. Then I'm with you on that. If that's his attitude to, I love the club, but I'm not sure about the game time. Then you've got to work harder for your game time. It's not shouldn't be given to you. And I didn't hear the story this summer that we were interested in him. I heard it a couple of seasons ago that we looked at him, and I think he's more of an attacking midfielder than more of like what we were looking for anyway, like that versatile box-to-box player. He's more of an attacking player as far as I'm aware. I don't know a great deal about him. I had a quick look at his before we came on. But yeah, I'm with you on that one. If he doesn't want that, he hasn't got that fight in him to fight for the first team place, then Napoli are more than welcome to him.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Edwards, it's that Carra mentality, isn't it? Every season Liverpool signed a centre-back to replace Carra, and he just, in his mind, said, well, that's not happening. And he fought and he fought and he fought, and he ensured that he was always playing and played through everyone and just had that mentality of, I will be the choice. Doesn't matter who you sign. And that mentality of, I don't think I'm going to get game time, it's not a Liverpool mentality, is it?
No, it's not. And I think I agree with what everyone's saying about it. Feels like one of those to me where they'll probably just put some feelers out at the start of the summer, basically to any player that's kind of on a bit of a list somewhere who might be interested, to know what their potential options are, and then go from there. It kind of feels like one of those for me, and probably no coincidence that he was playing in the Bundesliga, which seems to be where we tried to buy pretty much anyone from this summer, and obviously the sporting director that we had in there. So yeah, it doesn't feel like the right fit at all. I don't know much about the player, to be honest. I don't know in terms of his style or anything like that. Like I said, I've kind of a little look and attacking midfielder, maybe in the kind of Szoboszlai, even Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott type positions, but that feels like somewhere we're actually quite well stocked with someone relatively young, higher ceiling, attacking midfield. It feels like an area that we're not short of.
I think it was summer as well. I think all Liverpool fans, we Googled every day transfers, who's coming in. We saw Thuram, Kone, who's the one from Barella. I don't remember seeing this name come up at all.
Oh, no, the list of midfielders, I think he came up like twice, and we're talking about 2 stories out of 10 million stories.
Yeah, so he's probably just been, someone said, oh, they're looking for a midfielder. You're on the list of 30 to 40 players that we had, and he's gone, yeah, they want me. So it just seems like a story out of nothing, to be completely honest.
Let's be honest, when Liverpool lost to Caicedo and Lavia, they literally went to every single team and asked about the centre midfielders. So there was a story every other day about centre mid.
Yeah.
Now, one of the weirder news stories, and it seems to have raised its head, and we're 15 likes away from 75. So if you are new here, there's got about 250. Please subscribe to the channel. Likes, sub. Do you? Do you think? One of the weirder stories, and I'm going to ask chat this as well whilst we're at it, was Nunez to Chelsea. Chelsea wanted to get their hands on Darwin Nunez. Now, we've all spent a bit of time speculating how much money it would be for us to sell Salah. So, chat, how much money would Chelsea have to pay to sign Darwin Nunez? And I'm going to start with Mr. Edwards, our obviously transfer guru, who probably had Nunez on a list somewhere. How much? Is there a number?
I mean, it's like anything. Every player's got a price, I guess. But
Jamie Hughes, 130.
Yeah, I mean that was my thought, somewhere in around that, in terms of before Liverpool would consider selling. Obviously, partly because it's to Chelsea, because you probably can get more out of them. Whether he's worth that is obviously a completely different question. I think if Liverpool would have sold him this summer, I think probably most people are in agreement. We know there's a player there that could explode and be as good as anyone else centre forward. He might not, of course, and there's a rawness still to him. But I think there'd have been a lot of, oh my God, we've sold him, and he could bag 30 goals this season very, very easily. I actually think Chelsea would be a completely different animal with him in the side, because they've got some good footballers in there, and they've obviously signed a lot. But what they haven't got is people to stick the ball in the back of the net, which is quite an important part of football that their recruitment team seem to almost forgotten about. So, yeah, I think he would score a lot of goals there, which, yeah, I think that 120, 130 million would be before they'd even think about it. And even then, if you're going to do it, you're going to fleece Chelsea for every penny out of you, let's face it. But no, it feels just like it's another strange one, just one of these mad things.
I mean, not for sale seems to be, and people are going about 120 to 150, Lewis. I actually don't think Nunez would be successful at Chelsea, because I think there's so much aggression fans can show towards the players, and so much like what he got here, but at least Liverpool fans are around and they love him, and they show him that they love him, and I think he needs that as a player to be successful. Do you think he could be successful at Chelsea, and would you sell him? 150 is on the table. Would you sell him?
Just before I give about the whole, if he'd fit Chelsea, do you know what's just popped in my head and I think it's mad? Do you remember when we sold Torres for 50 million, who was like proven, and we were like, oh my God, that's so much money. And we're talking about someone who's been with us for one season at 150 mil. It's ridiculous. But
inflation, no, Frodo's are 35p now. I remember when they were 10.
But no, they've got a bit of a problem, I think, with strikers, because Chelsea especially, because of the past 15 years, there's been Drogba and Costa, and then all the other ones like Torres, Higuain, Morata, they've all struggled. So it's a bit of a weird. He's one of those players that he needs the system to suit him. So if it doesn't, it's just not going to work. And I think 150 million in particular is a lot to spend on someone who's just not going to. He doesn't seem like a Pochettino type of player, because he likes people who can get in behind a bit more. Whereas I think sometimes Nunez, he started doing it, but he's a bit more physical. He likes to put his back up to players and get the ball to feet and then pass it off to someone. So I don't think he'd fit.
What are you thinking, Mick? Are you thinking if he went to Chelsea, it'd be more a Timo Werner type thing? Because I think he could have been anything in the Premier League, but I think Chelsea ruined him. But you're there. No selling of Nunez. Nunez stays.
I think Nunez has the potential to be one of the best strikers in the world. He just needs to improve on a few things: his composure and his finishing on a regular basis. We said at Newcastle he can finish. We said it when he played for Benfica, he can finish, but he just needs to do it consistently. And he's probably, I'd say, his first touch is a bit poor. But if he can improve on them, he's like when you watch the game against Villa, when he came off, we did lose a lot from what his pace is frightening. He can, like that when I think Salah was stood in offside position, he get the ball, but he literally. I don't know how he manages to get to that ball he just needs to improve on a few things, but I'd never sell him, especially not to Chelsea.
It's like when Salah first came. You know, when Salah used to back into players and just used to push them away and then use his pace. He reminds me a lot like that, but he's more explosive almost.
Yeah, he really is, and he must frighten the hell out of centre backs with his pace and how like that. He just runs at people. His move is just knock the ball and run, and then just get on the end of it and try and stick it in the back of the net. But I've got a question.
Yeah.
Would you sell if you had to sell one tomorrow? Who would you sell, Nunez or Salah?
Oof! And please.
I think to them that just completely threw me off. Oh. How much money are we talking for Nunez? Like if it was
they're both the same price. 150. Let's say 150. Both 150.
I think Salah. Personally.
I think the
I've been indoctrinated by FSG because I'm thinking about Nunez.
Sell on fee.
I think the sensible answer is Salah, isn't it? Because of someone's put there in the chat the 7-year age difference. But us as football fans, whilst we can think logically, we also think with our heart sometimes, and we know what Salah's done for us over the last 5-6 years and has won everything for us. So I can't just think with my head. I have to think with my heart sometimes. It probably would be Salah I'd sell, but
won't be happy about
it. I don't like saying it.
It's why we don't let you ask the questions, Mick.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a good. I was going to ask it anyway, but I thought it was a good one. Just to slot in at the end.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our final story, which is Ryan Gravenberch back. Ryan, let's just call him Ryan. Dutch Ryan has rejected the call up to the under-21s, and it is fair to say, Mr. Edwards, that the international people of the Dutch teams are not happy about it. But if there's a way to get Liverpool fans on side without ever kicking a football, it's rejecting your national team, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much one of those people who has no interest in international football whatsoever. So for me, brilliant, good on him. I know that people feel differently. That's obviously an individual choice. I find it a bit weird the kind of the outrage over there because a guy who's been in the senior squad was in the under-21s. They've just had a tournament, so I assume that by the time the next tournament comes around, he's probably too old for the 21s anyway. Yeah. Surely, in their interest, if they can get him playing regular in the Liverpool team, he walks straight into their national team. And it does feel like the whole Dutch setup is a bit balmy. I mean, I saw the thing of, what's his name, Van Gaal talking about basically the World Cup was rigged for Messi to win it. And then they asked Van Dijk, do the players agree? It was like, no, that's mad. So the captain openly disagreeing with the manager on something like that. And obviously, was it Marco van Basten? He seems like it's quite a toxic type of environment around the Dutch football team. And we've probably had it in England, not so much at the moment, I guess, but in previous generations where it's been a bit like that. They're probably not at their height right now. Like I said, I don't watch much international football. So little bits of the World Cup, and they were a very average side. So obviously historically they've had some very, very good teams. So maybe it's just one of those. You've got the great players of the past, the Van Bastens of this world, who are genuinely world class players, and they don't have many of that around. So they get a lot of airtime over the current team, and it just feels like a bit of a strange one. The whole setup, the whole thing, every time you see them, just not just this circumstance. So well done to Gravenberch for me. It'll be, we've got whilst I don't think he'll start the Wolves game, we play the Europa League midweek, I believe it is, come back, first game, and then another league game, and then we've got the League Cup after that. I would imagine he's starting probably at least those 2 games. So having ready for that, brilliant. It's great. That's what we want.
I think the thing that throws me with this, Lewis, and why there's so much outrage, I don't get, is you've got a player who's just moved from Germany to Liverpool, needs a place to live, needs to house his family, needs to set up his life, needs to get used to the area, needs to get used to training, needs to understand where he's going to be playing in this thing. And you haven't selected him for your main squad. You've selected him for the under-21s. So he's made what would seem like the best mental health decision you can to set yourself up for success. And they're outraged that he's made a decision that's best for him. I just don't get it.
No. I think if it was the other way, say if it was for the senior squad, I'd have the complete opposite thing to what Mike said. I believe that the national team call-up is a reward for playing well. It shouldn't be looked at as a detriment. But I think being in the under-21s, there's no... I agree with him in that sense. I don't see the point of going to it. They've not long had a tournament. He's not playing in the senior squad. They're friendlies, so it's not like it's for anything, if it was for like qualifiers, maybe, but he's just moved to a new club. He knows that he's got a fight in the tank because we've just signed 2 other midfielders in essentially the same position as well as all the players we've already got. He wants to make an impression. And I think it was last season, was it Arthur Mello, when we first signed him on loan, and he was saying, I've come back a week early because I want to train to get into the squad. So it's been done before, and I don't see this whole, this could affect his future call-ups. Well, you're bringing the PR side of it then into the call-ups, and it shouldn't be that. It should be based on how well you're playing, not I'm going to sit this one out and then do a next one. Because I know it's a different sport, but if you look at like UFC or boxing, they got offered fights all the time and they say, no, I'm going to skip this one. I'll wait till a different one comes along. They don't then go to them and go, well, you're not going to get any fights in the future. So I don't see what the big fuss about him saying no to this particular one is. If it was the senior squad, maybe. Under 21s, under 18, not essentially. I don't see the big harm in him skipping it for 2 games.
And Mick, you've got the whole, you're playing in a Thomas Tuchel system, which is probably, you're dominating the ball, passing it around and stuff like that. You're then going to move into a Klopp system. So you're thinking, well, do you know what? I need to get some miles in my legs. I need to do some running. I need to get my pressing. I need to, I'm going to be trained by one of the best coaches in the world, which is only going to benefit the national team, isn't it? Frankie de Jong and Ryan Gravenberch could be a double pivot midfield that really helps them have a foundation for success. So why set fire to it for no reason?
Yeah, I think the Holland and Dutch media have always, they're a bit weird when it comes to stuff like this. But I totally agree. If it was a first team call up that is rejected, then I can sort of see it. But I still, it's only a friendly. It's not like they're going to a tournament to play. And he's signed for a new club, brand new culture, new country. Like he needs to get himself sorted first. And I think he wants to. It's a good way to impress, and I think he's probably decided not to go on, based probably personal matters as well. But he wants to get used to a new system, a new way of living, and I think it'd be good for him when the other players come back and they say, "Oh, look how sharp he is in training and stuff," because he spent them by there being an international break. He's been training, putting the work in to learn how we play. And I see it as a benefit, really. I don't see why they're all going mad about it. And I actually looked at the Holland current midfield squad, and he's better than Martin de Roon and Mats Vijver, I think his name is, how you pronounce it, I'm not sure. But I think he probably feels a bit that he's not in there, but he's only not in there because he never got any game time at Bayern Munich. On potential, he's better than what they have in the squad. He just needs to harness that potential, but he couldn't do it, sat on a bench at Bayern Munich. And I think that's his overall decision. I don't see why they're kicking a massive fuss up about it.
Makes sense. Now we're coming into the final part of the stream where we're going to go through some of your questions and just sort of bring them up. So if you have got any pressing questions that you want to give to us, please put them in chat. I'm starring some of the questions and we will get to them. If you are new here, there's 280 in the stream at the moment. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 100 likes on this stream, so that would be great. Now, Mr. Edwards, Alisson Becker hasn't made it in the shortlist for goalkeeper of the year in the Ballon d'Or, despite probably having the most critical point saves in any of the top 5 leagues in world football, despite the fact of how terrible we were. He did so much good work. How isn't Alisson Becker in that list?
Well, it's probably a bad thing you come to me on this one because I am probably the world's biggest Alisson Becker fan, and this stream could last for the several hours now. So I was also a goalkeeper throughout my playing career, played a decent level. So when I watch him play, that's what I love most. I'm sitting at Anfield, when the Liverpool are attacking the Kop and he's at mine. I think I'm watching Alisson Becker more than I'm watching Mo Salah or Trent Alexander-Arnold. It baffles me because he's easily the best goalkeeper in the world. We are probably biased, but I think if you speak to anyone who's not biased, they will tell you that as well. And really, really ironically, so today I was having a conversation with a guy who runs a goalkeeping data analytic company specifically on goalkeeping. So he's an American guy, and he was telling me. So we talk about goalkeeping, and basically, he thinks Alisson Becker is every metric that he's got, everything they do. Alisson Becker is the best. Basically, he's the one he provides a lot of the stats for his company, should I say, for Sky Sports and The Athletic and various other places as well. So it's a really interesting chat and kind of go into the detail of what they do. But in essence, Alisson Becker is the best, and it's just bonkers, isn't it? Some of the goalkeepers in there, that midfielder that Man United have signed for some reason, they want to play him in goal. He's on that list, isn't he? I can't get. I don't even know. Was Edison on there as well?
Let me give you the list. Because this is what Domtram said. And Lewis, tell me who you think is going to win on this list. So in pot 1, we've got Mike Mainga, Yassi Bonu, Andre Onana, Edison, Bryce Samba, and then we've got Emi Martinez, Courtois, Ramsdale, Livakovic, and ter Stegen.
Is Samba the guy from was at Nottingham Forest? Is that him?
I'm not sure.
Not now, I know, but was he the one who was at Nottingham Forest?
Bryce Samba, maybe. I'm not sure. So they were the goalies that are on the list. Who do you think is going to win it?
So,
and don't even get me started on the. I no idea on that one.
You know what the problem is with the Ballon d'Or and all these awards? It doesn't go based off how many goals you've scored, how many you've stopped, it's what you've won. That's what everyone looks at. It's the same as when people are picking the greatest ever teams. They say, well, what if he won? What if he won? I think if Alisson last season, say, if we'd have won a trophy or two, he'd be in this. And I think he's the best keeper in the world. I think he was the best in the world last season. But I think that's why he's not been picked. If I was picking one to win it, it's either between Edison or Emi Martinez. And I think Martinez will win it just because of the World Cup and that save in the World Cup. And I think that'll be the big, because people go off moments in these kind of things. I think that for the goalkeeper one personally, I can't recall a time last season where Edison really made a game-winning save, whereas Martinez won them the World Cup with his save. I may be sounding a bit naive about it, but I just don't. He's the only one apart from Alisson where I can remember a match-winning save that he did, and that he won them the World Cup essentially. So I think it'd be Martinez.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I can't remember Edison doing anything. He's always good, but I can't remember him doing anything like claiming, victory, saving points or anything like that. Whereas Martinez, his housery, shall we say, was infamous. So that infamy will probably lead to a popularity trophy, which is something like the Yashin trophy is.
The Ballon d'Or with Messi. Messi is gonna win it, but it should be Haaland.
Yeah. Now, Mick, we're going to move on from this, and I'm going to give you some of the questions that we've got in here. So we're going to try and give each of you one, maybe two each if we can. But I'm going to start you with the difficult one, which is if Nunez is 150, Salah's 200, Soboslai's 60, McAllister's 35, million. How much is Trent worth?
You've got to put in the English tax on that. So in today's market, if you sign him as a right back, 10 quid. If you sign him as a midfielder, over 100 million. Between 100 and 120.
I think he's one of them that's worth more to Liverpool than he is to anybody else. He's one of a bit like Zaha, probably a bad example, but the first person that came to mind, was always worth more to Crystal Palace than he was to any other team. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is kind of a real top-end level version of that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because at 24, he's got the second most assists in Premier League history, behind only Andy Robertson, and he'll overtake Andy Robertson. I think he's just overtaken Leighton Baines, who was second. So if you're looking at it from an offensive perspective, without a shadow of a doubt, is the most effective offensive fullback in Premier League history. And then I think when you think about the England midfield, and I use the England I'm not don't watch England, but you think of what that midfield is: Declan Rice, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Jude Bellingham. I cannot think of a better midfield balance-wise in world football, even at club level, because you've got deep range passer, someone who's defensive midfielder that progresses with the ball, and then Jude Bellingham, who just does anything. So I think from that perspective, he's easily over 100 million. And then it's just how much do you want him and how much does he fit into the solution that you need? Because I think he doesn't fit into our solution perfectly because we don't have that defensive midfielder like Rice. I think if we did, he'd be a double pivot midfielder with Szoboszlai in front of him. I
think that's his best position. I don't think... I was surprised we signed... I generally thought they were going to move Trent to midfield this season fully and sign a right back. That's what I wanted them to do. I didn't want them to... I wanted them to move Trent up and sign a right back because defensively, in the big games, that's where he gets undone, Trent. And that formation as well that we play.
Now, Mr. Edwards, I'm going to give you this question, which is, Klopp will sign an extension. So I will frame this in a question to you: is do you think Klopp will sign an extension, and do you think either Ward or Edwards is coming back, based on what you've heard so far?
I don't think he'll sign an extension. I'll be honest. Obviously, it goes without saying, I hope he does, but I just have a feeling it was kind of quite a big commitment for him to do the latest extension that he did. And he's probably had to promise his wife that's the last one, and that he's going to finally get to go on holiday and have a relax. I'll be surprised if he does. I think he's trying to build a team the next 3 seasons that's obviously going to be very competitive, but also I think it matters to him that he'll leave a legacy of a team that's still very good, unlike a certain manager down the East Lancs Road who maybe left his team in ruins and still is bearing the fruit of that now. So I don't think he will. Whether Edwards and Ward will come back.
They say never come back, don't they?
Yeah, probably not. Actually, I haven't really... I think there's been quite a few rumours. I've not seen anyone of any...
Everyone's been linked to
Sorry?
Edwards, everyone gets linked to Edwards. Like, when someone's transfer strategy goes completely left... It wouldn't surprise me if Chelsea get linked. Well, Chelsea have been linked to him, haven't they?
Yeah, I think I'd be amazed if Julian Ward comes back because we've not really had the full story of that. He was in charge for a year, and then when that seems like there's maybe something gone on there that we don't know about. I think the Michael Edwards one is probably more chance because of the time that's elapsed between him leaving. Maybe, but I'll be surprised. I think they'll want to rebuild a structure that will obviously eventually lead to the succession planning for Klopp. So it's kind of the two questions are very much linked. So unfortunately, I think no. I would love it to be yes. I hope I'm wrong, but I think no, unfortunately.
The 12th man, I'm assuming that some of the people saying 10 quid for Trent are probably rival fans just digging around in our stream. Which is absolutely fine. But Lewis, I'm going to give you this. We have this comment, which is Klopp will solve his Salah right wing problem by using players already in the squad. No, I'm not giving you Ben Doak. No. Ben Doak is not the answer to this question. He's off the table. He's still developing.
Is Cade Gordon?
No.
Well, he's still coming back from his hip rehabilitation, isn't he?
The answer is simple. Origi's only on loan at Nottingham Forest. No, I don't think. I think he'll bring people in. I just don't know. It's hard to tell really because, like I said before, if he changes the system just a little bit, then he might bring in more. He might stack the midfield and have less up front. He might go for 3 at the back and have more in up front. It's hard to tell. I think he'd need to sign another right winger because once Salah goes, really, Ben Doak is the only registered right back, so to speak. So I think he'd bring another one in, but I don't think he'll just swap players. I think he'd have to change the whole way we play rather than just sign one player and go, that'll do. He could do it with the players we've got, but you got to think as well, like Thiago is going to be leaving, Matip's going to be leaving probably. There's going to be Saudi could come in and buy Diaz, like for example, and then we have to buy more players. So at the moment, I'd say you have to sign more rather than just work with what we've got, because that's what everyone's getting frustrated about. But before we signed all these players, was the concern was that we were just going to use what we had and go, yeah, that's fine, that'll do, and it doesn't work. So I'd say sign more than Nathan.
Now, there is a chance that you don't actually have to. Well, do you know what, Mick? I'm just going to give you what Paul said here, and not that. Trent as a right wing is interesting. At least we wouldn't need to worry about his defence. Imagine a more classic 4-4-2. Gakpo, Nunez up front, Trent on the right wing.
Fowler column or those are 2 strikers. I've actually thought this myself about Trent being further pushed up as a far-sided right mid, not like a right winger, but a right midfielder.
Right mid.
Yeah. I like the idea of it, but it'd be completely change the system because what we play now wouldn't necessarily work, and I think that would affect Diaz's role as well more than if you switch to that more Trent pushing further up, because it's more likely that you'd more fall into it would more fall into a more standard 4-4-2, and your better option there is probably Gakpo and Nunez instead of Diaz. But yeah, I like Trent I'd like to see it maybe in like a Europa League game, or maybe try it, see how it goes. But I think Trent is ultimately better further forward than he is defensively. Which is, I think it's quite. And I don't think the system, because I always thought that I've never thought Trent has been brilliant defensively, even when I think it was covered up more from the work that Henderson Fabinho put in to cover that space that he negated. I've never thought he'd be. The one time I've seen him be fantastic defensively was against City, and he had Sané in his pocket in the Champions League game. Mm-hmm. That is the only game where he can defend. But I don't think he's been asked to defend anymore. And I think that's sort of the problem with Trent at the minute is he's not, the role that he's been asked to play really negates him of his defensive duty I think that's what's causing the problem with Trent defensively is he's out of position on transition enough 9 times out of 10.
Wasn't it Jamie Carragher who said fullbacks are just wingers who couldn't play as a winger? So I mean, it might work. It definitely could work.
Trent's statistical flaw is in the air. His tackling success rate and tackling dribble rate is actually not that far off most wingers, but his aerial success rate is abysmal. It's like 12% in the air. So if you want to attack that side, if he's in position, you just launch it and you win the header, even against wingers.
And it's not a size problem, isn't it? He's a fairly decent. He must be 6 foot, 6'1", something like that. He's quite a big fella, isn't he? I personally with Trent, I quite like him in the position we're playing him now. I thought it was really interesting on Saturday how when he was going into that kind of 6 position to get the ball, they pushed John McGinn right onto him. And he clearly realised that straight away and almost went in essentially at centre-back. And Matip went wide. And it was almost like a, come on then, come on. He was daring John McGinn to come onto him, which he didn't do, which then got him into positions to be able to do all the passes that he did on Saturday. I don't think that was a purposeful start of the game thing. They might have talked about it, it might happen. It was almost, like I said, a dare to McGinn in this case you can either come and follow me right into this deep position and empty the midfield, or you can sit back and I've got time to ping the ball against a high defence. So I personally quite like him in this role. I think we, since we've changed, we're 15 unbeaten. And whilst last season I think it was a little bit harem scarum, the Villa game, whilst it's only one game, felt really controlled. And it'd be interesting. I think the next 2 games are actually really interesting to see. Potentially we could do the same again. And he's key to that because, especially Nunez and Diaz, because he can ping them 50, 60, 70-yard balls to them two, either over the top or in case of Diaz to his feet. And it just gets Liverpool right up the pitch. And personally, I like him in this role. I know some people are different, but I think it's worth sticking with.
Can you see that working against a team like Real Madrid?
I think it
when you have the runners that they have from midfield.
If you had Canate or Gomez on the right-hand side with Matip, I think it could work. I don't think it can work with Matip.
I think that you got to remember last season, let's face it, we didn't have a function in midfield, and that's key. And it's interesting. Szoboszlai's there, who seems like he could run forever. And Henderson at his best was what he was good at. He covered. He created space for Salah and Trent going forward, and he covered them defensively as well. Obviously, Szoboszlai's got more about him in terms of his football and going forward, but he's putting that work in as well. And obviously, Gravenberch is a bit of an interesting one. Are we going to play him centrally of the 3? Because I haven't seen loads of him, but what I do know of him, he's an athlete. He's a big, strong guy who will get across and cover those areas. That's what I feel he's been bought for. And part of it might be to give Trent more time on the ball.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's going to be a bit more defensive because we definitely don't need it. Because I think he's going to come back a bit more because he's tall as well. Like, he's big. I didn't realize he was so big until he actually looked him up properly.
6'3", I think.
6'3",
yeah. It's like Grujic when we signed him. I think he's going to be that sort of win the ball back in midfield. He's not an out-and-out defensive midfielder, but he'll just run. He'll run and run and run until he wins the ball back.
Legs in midfield. We had no legs in midfield this year, and now we've got legs. And that's forget about it. Even if we don't even start by talking about the quality of what they've got, the legs bit, and that's what probably Klopp's team at its best. The Milner, Henderson, Fabinho, Wijnaldum type phrase. They got around the pitch.
Most of the games we play, we're not needing a traditional 6, are we? We're going to be dominating most teams in terms of possession. A lot of teams will put a low block in against us. So you kind of want a 6 that can play football, not just tackle people. And that's kind of I think what he's looking for. I think that's why Andre was so interesting, because he's that Dunga-esque 6 who can just play the ball everywhere, run with it, do what's needed, and just orchestrate play. So January is really interesting for me, because I think if we sign him as a Thiago replacement, I think he's a deeper Thiago replacement. Now, Lewis, I've got one final question for you before we close out the stream. Of the developing Liverpool midfielders coming through, we've got Curtis Jones, we've got Bajcetic, and we've got Harvey Elliott. Can you rank them in terms of who is currently at the top form and who needs to take the next step up?
Is this as in who I think is the better?
Who's currently the best player of because it's going to change throughout the career with Liverpool, isn't it? But at this moment in time, who's number 1, who's number 2, who's number 3? Please put it in the chat if you want to stick your neck out. But we're going to close out on this.
I know number 3. It's 1 and 2 that I'm sort of. I think 3 is Curtis Jones. I mean, he did brilliant towards the end of last season, but I think after that Everton goal, in the FA Cup. I think people expected a lot more of him, and there's just not, the injuries don't help, and it's just not really kicked on. And then I think Badge number 2, and then Harvey Elliott number 1. Because I think
exactly the same.
Yeah, I'd go the same as well.
I'm the opposite.
The game when he came on, he brought energy. Obviously, he made the pass that got that started the whole play with Nunez scoring. I just think he's got more about him. He wants to get forward. Badge is good, but in the position he plays, I think he's meant to be a CDM, and he's not got that physicality about him yet, which I think will happen as he gets older.
I'm this at the moment because I think Jones played well towards the end of last season. He won the under-21s World Cup. He came straight into and Badge has been injured that whole time. So I think I put him third at the moment because he's not playing. That's it for me. That's the only reason. But Elliott comes on, make a difference. But Jones is starting at the moment. That's why it's that 3 for me at the moment. But I think you're right. I think Badge and everyone's saying in chat, Bajcetic will end up being the top 1. And I kind of agree with that.
So I think
Elliott will be the best out of them 3. I think Elliott's the best potential out of them 3 to be a world-class player.
Elliott's can do anything. Like, his passing's great. He's energetic. He's left-footed, and to be fair, his right's not bad either. He can score a goal. Bad pitch. I haven't seen a lot of them, but I can't remember him having a bad game last season when he played. And Jones is so hot and cold. He's hot at the minute, but it could die off. It could die a death like any moment.
Isn't he great with 3 of them though?
Yeah. He's 22. He's going to be hot and cold until he gains experience. Like Elliott's going to be hot and cold for the rest. Badge is going to be hot and cold. Gravenberch is going to be hot and cold. Soberslai should be hot and cold as well. And this is the nature of a young midfield. But we're going to close the stream with this shocking revelation. For 100 million, we will sell Salah as long as we get Julian Ward and Michael Edwards back in that deal. If we don't get, if we only get one of them, Salah goes for 150 million. If we get neither, Salah goes for 200 million. That's the deal, Saudi. So, get us Michael Edwards back and we've got ourselves a deal. This is LFC Transfer Room. Thank you very much to Mike, Mick and Lewis. I'm James, and we will catch you on the next one. Take care.